I'm an addict named Alan. I'm already thirsty. Is there anyone here with 1 day clean? Anyone with 2 days clean? 3 days? Come up front. This is Jim. Jim is my new friend.
Yes, sir.
And I want you all to welcome Jim to Narcotics Anonymous. I don't know if anyone saw me all weekend walking around, but I walk around with these sweatshirts on all the time. It's because I believe in Narcotics Anonymous. And when I wear these, I'm a representative of Narcotics Anonymous. And what this does is when I wear this in public, it helps me not act out on character defects. Because when people see you wearing Narcotics Anonymous, you can't fuck up. So I brought one of these from Maryland. And we're going to give that to Jim. Thank you. Now I want to thank the committee. I want to thank the committee for inviting me here. I want to thank the committee for all the work they've done. If you've never worked on a convention, it is a lot of work. So for the committee, thank you very much. I have one other little story, two stories I got to do before I get into my story. And believe me, I will probably be exactly about an hour because I know as addicts, their mind will only absorb what our ass can endure. So I won't be real long. I got clean in 1986. And a few years later, I ended up going to a NA auction, just like the one they had here. But it was something new. We didn't know, nobody knew about an NA auction, but they had one time. And they ended up, me and a buddy of mine, I was a biker when I got clean. I didn't look like this. If you're a biker, I'm not like slamming you, but I'm just telling you who I was. Anyway, we end up at this NA auction. I'm going to tell the story as fast as I can. We go to this auction, me and my buddies, a bunch of us, and on the table there was this T-shirt. It had like the biker emblem to it, and it was from East LA. And we were both like, man, that's a cool shirt, man. I'm going to get that shirt. And you got to remember, this was like back in 90-something, 94 or 5, something like that. And we were, not rich by a long means, but we wanted this shirt. So we started to look at the rest of the merchandise, and there was they had coffee cups, they had shirts, they had jackets, they had stuff like they had here tonight. And they had a coffee cup. And I was like, wow, I really like that coffee cup because it kind of reminded me of like Lynyrd Skynyrd stuff, like old woodsy stuff. And I was like, I really like that cup, man, I'm going to get that cup. So him and I shared the same sponsor, who happened to be the auctioneer, who knew that we both wanted both of those items. So he egged it on. So we ended up, one of us got the t-shirt for like $32. It was probably worth 50 cents. Well, when one of us won the t-shirt, and he was about my size, we pulled the shirt up and it was small. Wouldn't fit either one of us. One of us ended up with the cup. I don't know who it was. But I remember the cup, and we looked at it, and I was like, man, I would really like to go there. That's a really cool looking place. Now, I didn't know at the time, you can't gauge a convention or anything on a cup. But we didn't know that. But I looked at the cup, and it was really cool. It reminded me of like Leonard Skinner shit, and I was like, that is really neat. I'd like to go there sometime. And so one of us got the cup, one of us got the shirt. Him and I share the same clean week. We both had the same exact clean time. He celebrates like 4 days before I do. So what happened was, at his anniversary the next year, I took him the cup. 4 days later, he gave me the shirt. The very next year, I took him the shirt. 4 days later, he gave me the cup. Now, him and I did this for 5, 6 years. I don't know how long it was. Every year we would change these things. And then it stopped. I don't know what happened to the cup. I don't know what happened to the shirt. Don't have a clue. The shirt never fit either one of us anyway. But it looked cool. And you know how it is when you're an addict. No matter what happens, you have to look cool. You know what I mean? It's like before I came here tonight, Denise and I said the speaker's prayer. God, please let me look good. So anyway, time goes on. That old ritual kind of died. He's still clean, I'm still clean. I moved away. So I get this phone call from this convention. Asked me to come and do a Saturday banquet meeting. I said, sure, I'll like to do that. And never even crossed my mind. So I get this letter in the mail. And the letter in the mail says, Cabin Fever Prevention Convention. And I look at it, and I put it on the desk, and I leave for work. And all day long, that is in my mind like, Cabin Fever Prevention Convention. Why does that ring a bell in my head? All day long it bothered me. Why does that ring a bell in my head? I got home that night, and it finally dawned on me. That cup. February the 18th, 19th, and 20th, 1994. Cabin Fever Prevention Convention, hosted by the Mid-Missouri area. And if you don't believe there's a God, I do. So I thought about it. I thought, man, where's this cup at? I didn't know if he had it or I had it. So I called him. I said, Steve, you remember that cup and that funny-ass shirt we bought many, many years ago? He said, yeah. I said, I think you got the cup. He said, no, you got the cup. So I went digging, and I found it. And I thought, you know what, that's amazing that God saw fit that many, many years ago in recovery I wanted to be here. And now I'm here. And I thought, what do I do with this cup? I've never drank out of it. So somewhere in the audience, under your seat, is a piece of paper. Whoever finds a piece of paper gets this cup. No, it's that guy. It's that guy right there. up, came home. Anyway, I'm an addict named Alan, and I am very overwhelmed with you people. You guys have touched my heart. I mean, deeply. This convention for us couldn't have come at a better time. In our area where we're from Baltimore City. It's not like it is here. It's like you guys listen. It's quiet. There's no phones ringing. There's no fistfights in the meetings. We have that. Give them 5 minutes. But all weekend, man, I've been walking around and you guys have just been so nice and so kind. And I just want you guys to like pat yourself on the back. Because you guys are special. I mean, very special. You guys got something going on here in Narcotics Anonymous that we need in a lot more places. You guys are special. Anyway, thank you, man. Just thanks. I mean, this is just amazing. We've really been relaxed. You know, we do this a lot. We go to a lot of conventions, and usually by Saturday we're ready to go home. And I don't want to go home. I'm like, this is like nice. Anyway, man, I started out like a lot of people. Man, I started using when I was 9 years old, and started out at a party. My uncle would come to my parents' parties, and he would feed me beer behind their back. And at a very young age, I found out that if I got drunk at 9 years old and ran around and acted like a little nut, that everybody paid attention to me and thought I was cool and said, wow, look at him. They didn't know what happened. They didn't know what was going to happen. And what happened is through a few years and people telling me things that were going to happen, you know, because I was the guy that really early in age, like I ended up on probation at 11 years old. I ended up in front of the same judge over and over and over again at a very, very young age. And there were a lot of people that were telling me things that were going to happen in my life. And in my mind, I knew that I was different. Just like our literature says, I knew that I was different. It wasn't going to happen to me. I was slicker, quicker, and hipper than anybody that ever used or did what I was doing, is what my mind told me. But what happened was, just like our literature says, the ends are always the same. Jails, institutions, and death doesn't always mean that it comes in that order. But the ends are always the same. Jails, institutions, and death. And I found myself on many occasions in the back of police cars with handcuffs on. And to speed my story up, like 16 years later, I remember sitting on a toilet with the lady putting a spike in my arm over and over and over again because I couldn't get off anymore. And there was blood on me, and there was blood on her. There was blood on the floor, and we were locked in this bathroom. Her boyfriend, who was my best friend, who was my cousin, who was my lifelong idol, who I looked up to all my life, was outside of that bathroom door, kicking the door off the hinges with a loaded 12-gauge shotgun because it was the last hit that night and he wanted it. He kicked the hinges off the door and took us out in the living room, and he proceeded to shoot the house. He was shooting the ceiling, shooting the walls, and every now and then he would turn around and put the gun to my face. And I could smell the smoke, I could see the smoke, and he would put the gun to my face and push my head back in the couch and say, I'm going to blow your fucking brains out. And this was my best friend. This was my hero that I looked up to all my life. Because he was older than I was. He was really handsome. All the women wanted him. He always was a drug dealer. He had a car. I mean, that meant a lot. But he was always that guy that everybody like went to. You know what I mean? He was the guy in the whole neighborhood that like if somebody threatened somebody, you better call Stevie. If somebody stole something, you better call Stevie. He'll straighten it out. And here this guy was putting my face up against this 12 gauge. And you know, it started out with me drinking alcohol and smoking pot and taking speed and stuff like that. And at the end of the road, the disease of addiction had me to a point where we were making massive amounts of PCP. And I don't know if anybody's real familiar with PCP, but I loved that shit. I loved it. I would do anything for PCP. But we were making massive amounts of PCP and selling some of it, using most of it. We were shooting massive amounts of cocaine. We were taking LSD on top of it and drinking Jack Daniels out of the bottle and chasing it with Budweiser. And that's how I like to use. I like to get out of my mind. And I used like that for probably the last 2 or 3 years of my using. And today, when I like go to the store and I leave the house and I get in the truck and I'm wondering like, where am I going? I wonder why. You know, it's like in the first step it says, could it be the drugs? There's a lot of days that I ride down the road like forgetting where I've been going and like past where I'm going and have to go back. But it ended up like that for me, man. I was the kind of guy, you know, and I hear people talk about, you know, their drug of choice and my drug of choice was more. Whatever it was, I wanted all of it. And I would do anything to get it. Beg, borrow, or steal, didn't make no difference. Ended up, my father, my mother, my 2 sisters, and my brother, who were all older than I was the baby. We were all using, and we lived in this neighborhood that was very, very, it was kind of quiet. I ended up in Narcotics Anonymous finding out, one of the first things I found out was they said you had to believe in a loving God. I knew like 2 things about God. I knew that if you did that, God would get you. And if you did that, you were going to hell. And that was all I knew about God. In our household, it was not uncommon to have police officers pull up to the house on a daily basis looking for somebody, serving papers, wondering where somebody was. My dad's car was always wrecked, but he never wrecked it. It was always us. But what happened was, it was this little family across the street, and they were the churchgoers. And it was the Mr. and Mrs. Lewis and the 2 little boys, Jimmy and Jamie. And what would happen is their house was like the monsters. It was like our grass was always really high, the lawnmower was broken down, the trash cans were crushed. Now their house, everything was perfectly manicured. They had flowers. We never had flowers. But what would happen is on Sundays they would come out in the morning. He would start the car, she would come out, he would open the door, she would get in, he would shut the door. The little boys would come out, they had their little Bibles under their arms, they would get in the car, and they would like ease on out of the driveway. A few hours later they would come back, they would go in the house, I assume they were eating lunch. They would come out about a half an hour later, and they would all be in the yard. And one would be raking, one would be cutting this, one would be picking up trash, whatever. Father would be painting doors. It was like a nice little family unit. They had something going on. Now, in our house, we were coming too. I was like sneaking into my sister's room, stealing her pot. She was in my brother's pants stealing his speed. My other sister was in my father's room stealing his money. And and somebody was in the refrigerator seeing if there was any beer left over from the night before. And this is how warped and twisted we get information. I remember at a very young age, I was probably like 14 years old. I walked out in the living room one day, and my father's sitting on the couch. And believe me, I don't blame my parents for anything. I have wonderful parents. He's sitting on the couch. The Lewises are in their yard working. We're all just waking up. It's probably 2 in the afternoon. I walk out in the living room and I look at my father. He's looking out the window at the Lewises. He looks at me and says, "These fucking people are weird." And I say that just to let you know that sometimes the information we get is really wrong. I learned a lot of really crazy behaviors. You know, I was the guy, and I'll talk about a whole lot of stuff. I was the guy, man, that ended up, right, in every relationship that I was ever in, I ended up putting my hands on somebody. Every relationship. Every relationship. And I don't just mean sexual relationships. Every relationship. I put my hands on somebody. I always ended up in the courtroom with assault and battery charges in front of the same judge. It got to the point where the judge looked at me and said, "Mr. Anthony, you have a problem putting your hands on people." I'm standing there in handcuffs with no lawyer like we do, telling myself, I haven't hurt anybody. If you'll let me out of here, because I'm not bothering anybody but myself. Not even knowing what was going on in my life. I couldn't stop using. The last day of my using, October 1986. I get drug out of the bathroom. I'm getting ready to get my head blown off by my best buddy. He ends up running back into the bedroom to get more shotgun shells. Tells us, "Don't move." Now, I don't know about you, but as soon as he left, we broke. We went back the next morning. He was passed out. I woke him up. I would love to say that, you know what, man? I left there and I said, "Man, fuck this. I've had enough. I'm done. I'm going somewhere. Treatment, rehab, AA, what, something. I'm doing something." But we woke him up. There's holes all in the living room. Sheetrock hanging in this house. He doesn't remember any of it. Him and I leave to go get sheetrock, to come back to fix the stuff. We come back an hour later with a half a keg of beer and a half a gallon of whiskey and started smoking greens. I don't think it ever got fixed. And I say that just to let you know, man, the disease of addiction don't care. The disease of addiction is alive and well. The disease of addiction wants nothing more than for me to mess up and make one bad decision so it can drag me around and put me back in a bathroom and have somebody putting a shotgun through my face saying, "I'm going to blow your brains out." I don't choose to live like that today. I left that situation that afternoon. I drove to Virginia Beach and I blacked out and drove under a tractor trailer. And that was October of 1986. It was a guy that was in my life many, many years ago. I got him high for the very first time in his life. First time the man ever got high, I got him high. The disease of addiction took him down a different road and slung him all over hell. I ended up in Virginia Beach. And I ended up back in Maryland. And this guy showed up on my doorstep. I hadn't seen him in years. And he was a man of no words. He hardly talked. And he walked up to the door and he said, "Where you been?" I said, "I've been in Virginia Beach." This guy used to race horses. He said, "Why don't you go to this meeting with me tonight?" Now, I went with him before when he raced horses. They would have to go and get signed in. They would have to check their credentials, check their jockey license. They would have to get weighed in. They would have to do a urine test. And they would have to get certified to race that weekend. I said, "All right, I'll go." He said, "Well, show up at my house tomorrow." I said, "All right." I said, "What time?" He said, "About 6:30. So I showed up at this guy's house. He was on his riding lawnmower cutting grass, and I pulled up, not knowing anything. I thought we were going through the horse track. And he brought me into a room called Narcotics Anonymous. And I haven't left. I've stayed. I went to the coffee pot. I didn't drink coffee. But there was this girl. There was this girl named Marie. And she walked past. I didn't look like I looked, man. I had like really long hair. I had big silver rings on every finger. My blue jeans were completely ripped all the way around the knees. They were hanging on by the thread in the back. I had black biker boots. I had silver rings hanging on my biker boots. The fronts of my feet were worn out from dragging the road. When it rained, my socks would stick out of my boots. I had a biker wallet with the biker chain. The back pocket was ripped out, and if I moved the wrong way, the wallet would fall out and hang down behind my leg. And I would have to reach back and pull it back up through the hole and reposition it. I would have to reposition it in my pockets because there wasn't a lot there to hold it. I had a dog chain around my neck, a choker chain, one of those big ones, tied together with a piece of leather. I wore a red bandana. I had 2 vests. I didn't have shirts. I had two vests. One was black and one was brown. I wore mirror sunglasses everywhere I went. And when I ended up in Narcotics Anonymous, I remember sitting down and I looked around and I thought, thank God I'm here, because these people need help. That's how deranged we can be. Anyway, I go to these meetings with this guy. He said, "What did you think?" I said, "I guess it's all right. That's where you need to be." He said, "Well, you want to go again?" I said, "I guess." I thought he meant like next month. He said, "Well, I'll pick you up tomorrow about the same time." And I'm thinking, man. Anyway, we go to this meeting, and there she was again, at the coffee pot. Remember, I didn't drink coffee, but I started to, because Marie drank lots of coffee. And when I went up to the coffee pot, Marie looked at me, and she said, "I have to stay away from you." So I drank more coffee. Watch what you pray for. You just might get it. We hooked up. And a couple months later, some other girl walked in the meeting. I thought she smiled at me. So her and I started drinking coffee together. We hooked up. A couple months later, another girl walked in the meeting, and I know she smiled at me. So we started drinking coffee together, and we hooked up. And what happened was, one of my buddies told me, he said, "You know what, man, you're clean." Because this was a while later. He said, "But you know what, man?" He said, "You're a whore." And it didn't sound good. But see, when I was out there, man, we were supposed to do that. That's what I was taught, that we were supposed to be like that. You know, I had a guy told me many times that every smart rabbit has a couple holes. That's what he told me. That was my sponsor on the street. So when I ended up in Narcotics Anonymous, I didn't know any better. But when this guy said, "You know what, man, you're a whore," it didn't sound right. Because I was taught, and please don't take this wrong, it's not today, I was taught that when a woman slept around, she was a whore. When men did it, we were players. It's a dressed up name for a terrible character defect, is what it is. But what had happened was enough recovery had set in to make me look at that. And I didn't want to be a whore. And I started to change that behavior. And I remember like having a little period where like I looked at them and I got close to the coffee pot, but I wouldn't do a lot. You know what I mean? And then one day, and I remember hearing, and this is what I'm talking about, I remember somebody said, "Be careful what you pray for, you just might get it." And here she came. She walked in the door. Probably had 8 minutes clean. And I know she smiled at me. And I thought, God, if you please put her in my life, I will not ask for anything else. Just please let me have a shot at that. If you put her in my life, I will never ask you for anything else. We hooked up. And about 2.5 months later, I remember praying to the same God, "God, please take this crazy motherfucker out of my life. I can't take it anymore." And then what happened was I got a sponsor. Thank God. And my life changed. My life changed. I mean, just unbelievable. What happened was this guy got me involved with step work. He got me involved with service. When we met, he told me, he said, "This is what you will do." He said, "You'll write steps. You'll help people. You'll have a home group. You'll participate in that home group. You must go to area service and tell them that you're new and you're there to help." And my first thought was, who the fuck does he think he is? Somehow or the other, I did all that stuff. Somehow or the other, man, I still continue to do that stuff. I'm not one of those people that say, I go to meetings, I work the steps. See, I can't trick you with that stuff. I work the steps. How? I write them on paper. I call my sponsor, who I talk to basically every day or every other day. Because that's what works for me. I can't get too far away from my sponsor, because what will happen is I'll become my own sponsor, and then I'll be high. Because if you're your own sponsor, you got a fool for a sponsor. But anyway, I got involved with these steps, and right now I'm in the middle of another first step. Me and my sponsor met about a month ago, because he's busy, I'm busy, but we met about a month ago, and I think in like 3 hours we did 8 questions. He talks a lot. That's what it is. But I got involved with Narcotics Anonymous, and I bought it 100%. I ended up here wanting to die. I came into Narcotics Anonymous hopeless. I came into Narcotics Anonymous broken. I came into Narcotics Anonymous wanting to die. One of the last days that I used, I remember saying a prayer. God, please take me out of here, because I can't live like this anymore. Please just take me out. Because the pain of addiction, I couldn't take anymore. Somehow or the other, God saw fit that Craig would show up on my doorstep and take me to a meeting. The crazy thing is, here it is 20 years later, him and I don't even talk. We see each other and we shake our heads. But that's just the way Narcotics Anonymous is. You move on and you grow, and you move and you grow. My life's been, my journey through these steps and my journey through this process has been good. It's been painful. It's been slow. It's been fast. It's been beautiful. It's been very ugly. It's been pretty much everything that you can think of. I've done a lot of stuff here that I would do all over again in a heartbeat if I had a chance. There are some things that I would think twice about doing some of those things, like praying for that girl. But anyway, I got on that journey, and I started working these steps, and I found the God that I could believe in. I found the God that I could use. Didn't have to be your God. You guys told me it only had to be 3 things: loving, caring, and more powerful than I was. That was it. Didn't have to be anything else. That's all it had to be. I found that my higher power is the only thing that can love unconditionally. That when I mess up, my higher power is always there. When I don't feel God, I'm the one that moved. He's always been there. Life goes on. Many years later, highlights of recovery. I have 2 daughters. Now I have a granddaughter. She's 5. Got another granddaughter on the way. But I remember when I ended up in Narcotics Anonymous, I was a racist. Sold a lot of drugs to black people, but I was a racist. I was raised in a racist household. My mom and dad are still very, very racist. Thank God for Narcotics Anonymous. God has a way of putting people in your life that you never know where your help's going to come from. But I came here real racist. And I remember, I think I had like about 10 years clean, 8 years clean. And God had put 2 black men in my life that were very, very strong in recovery. Everybody respected them in that area. They were really good guys. And somehow or the other, these 2 guys took to me like peanut butter and jelly. And every meeting I was in, they would hug me like close. And just, how are you doing? And man, it's so good to see you. And man, we really like seeing you in meetings. And I would be like, ugh. Because that's what I was taught. We built a bond. We got really close. I would go to their house. We'd hang out. We went to meetings together. Watch who you judge. And in about 8 or 9 years clean, I found out that my oldest daughter was 12 years old at the time. And I found out that she had been raped by her mother's boyfriend. And at the same exact time, the girlfriend that I had, I found out she was sleeping with somebody else. And about 3 days after all of that, I had to go to the doctor for this job interview that I was going into. And when I went into the doctor's office, they told me, they said, your heart rate is really elevated. So they sat me down and made me wait a little while. They took my blood pressure again. They said, Mr. Anthony, your heart rate is 198 over 186. Your heart's trying to explode. Do you have problems with your heart? I said, no. So they gave me a couple pills, blood pressure pills, said, you need to go see your doctor, like, immediately. So I made an appointment. I went and seen him. They did some tests. He said, have you ever had any trouble with your kidneys? I said, no. Never went to the doctor. Don't have any problems. So he sent me to this kidney specialist. He said, just for kicks and giggles, man, why don't you go to this kidney specialist? He'll check your kidneys and see what's going on. So they sent me to this kidney specialist. Meantime, I'm still dealing with my daughter being raped, my girlfriend sleeping with some other guy, and of course I knew he was nowhere as good as I was. That's why she was with him. So I ended up going to this specialist, and they did a sonogram on me, and they checked my kidneys, and they told me that I had a kidney disease, and that both of my kidneys were going. And it was advanced polycystic kidney disease. And they took some blood, and the next day they called me and they said, well, we found out now that you have hepatitis C. And I remember riding down the road in my mind thinking about my daughter being raped, thinking about the girl that had left, thinking about this kidney disease, thinking about hepatitis C. And I remember calling this guy Larry, one of the black guys. And I said, I need to come see you. And he said, come on over. And I remember I went to Larry's house. And you got to remember, I'm a racist. And I called black guy for help. And I got to his house. And we sat on his picnic table. And he let me cry and blow snot all over his shoulder. And he hugged me, and he said, I love you, and we'll get through this. For some reason or the other, I'm not a racist anymore. Thank God for Narcotics Anonymous. Anyway, life goes on, man. Life goes on. You deal and you deal and you deal. Life goes on. I ended up, man, blowing up. I'm single. I'm living by myself. I'm not using drugs anymore, but I found a new addiction called Breyers Vanilla Ice Cream. Our literature talks about the progression of the disease. I started out eating a cup. And then it went to a bowl. And then it went to me smashing the ice cream down in the bowl. And I would end up with a half a gallon of ice cream, and I would have like 2 spoons of ice cream left in the box. I don't know why I did that. But I would take all the ice cream out of the box and smash it in the bowl and put like 2 bites in so I could convince myself that I wasn't eating the whole half a gallon. So what happened was I went from like 185 pounds to 264 pounds. And at that same exact time, I'd blown my knee out. I had 4 knee operations. I blew my knee out. I didn't have insurance. Couldn't get an operation. I'm 264 pounds. I'm sitting on my couch all by myself, and I'm eating ice cream. And it went from a half a gallon of Breyers vanilla to a half a gallon of Breyers vanilla and a half a gallon of chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry together. And then it went to put some cookies in also. Because now I'm caught up. I can't stop. I'm hopeless. I'm in a dilemma. I need a sponsor. And I need one bad. Guess what? Narcotics Anonymous had one. I called a friend of mine who is a physical therapist. He's very into nutrition. He's in Narcotics Anonymous. And just like when I came into Narcotics Anonymous from using drugs, I called him and I said, Paul, I can't live like this anymore. I want to die. When I bend over to tie my shoes, I lose my breath. When I walk up 10 stairs, I feel like I'm going to pass out. What do I do? He said, well, you just need to do this. You need to do that. You need to cut back on that. You need to start exercising, man. Stay away from this. Don't eat that. And go to a meeting. And call me every day. And probably within about a year, I went down to 186 pounds. Thank God for Narcotics Anonymous. It was an honest program. I put a little bit back on. Trying to get rid of it. It's real hard. But I'm not eating ice cream. I sat on that couch for a long time at night. And I remember getting to a point where I had given up on life. At 264 pounds, single, had a kidney disease, had a liver disease, and I thought life was over. I wasn't working. I was basically jobless, penniless, and homeless because I was living in a place that I wasn't even supposed to be in. And I remember laying there, and I had called Paul, and he told me what to do, and I thought that I would make a ditch effort. Try to start exercising, doing what I'm supposed to do. But I remember laying on that couch at night one night, saying a prayer to God. Say, God, I can't live like this. I would really like somebody in my life. And I remember laying on that couch crying one night. And I told myself, I said, you know what? It ain't even about the sex. Because there was a time in my recovery where I didn't even need a whole person. I don't know if you get that or not. Just a couple parts were pretty good. But I had gotten to a place in my life where it wasn't even about the sex. And I remember laying there telling God, crying. I said, God, if you would put somebody in my life just so I could rub their feet. I just want a foot to rub. Because I was so alone. I felt like life was over. And I remember saying, I just would like to rub a fucking foot. So I go to this meeting. Later, these newcomer guys dragged me to this meeting. It was a meeting in a dance or something. I didn't want to go. Now I'd done lost a bunch of weight, but I still didn't want to go. I was still down and out on myself. Forgot all about this prayer. I go to this dance, and I didn't even see a person. I saw a leg come in the door. Long legs. And I said, good God, look at that. Never saw this woman before in my life. We lived probably 45 minutes away from each other in our own region, had been to all the same functions, had been to all the Thanksgiving dinners, all the beach parties, all the conventions, year after year after year after year, and never saw each other. But there she was. And she smiled at me. And the next thing I know, here she comes, right up in my right up in my face. Aren't you that guy? I was like, who is this up in my face? She said, you this and you that and blah, 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 blah. And so I pulled out the best NA pickup line I could. I said, check it out. My anniversary's in a week. Why don't you stop on by? I'll think about it. So I go home. She told me to call her. So I called. We talked for about a minute. She said, look, I really got to go. I said, okay, real spiritual. All right, okay, I'll talk to you soon. And I got off the phone and I thought, motherfucker. I ruined that. She said she'd come. She said she'd come to my anniversary. I was all excited, like a little baby. I was so happy that somebody had paid attention to me in Narcotics Anonymous. Me and my sponsor sitting up there at my anniversary table, about this many people there. She didn't know where she was going. I gave her directions. I didn't know it, but she's always fashionably late. So me and my sponsor sitting there, the meeting's ready to start. I already done called him and told him that this woman's breathing on me and hot and heavy and wants me. So he gets there, and she ain't there. He says, where's she at? Romeo. I started feeling so bad I didn't even want to celebrate. And you got to remember, there's 10,000 people there. I can't back out. So I'm depressed now. I'm down. I'm like, man, this is messed up. She stood me up. Meeting starts, and she walked in the door. And you know what, man? We have been together ever since. I don't think we've spent more than probably 4 or 5 days apart when one of us goes away, and it's been going on 6 years. I got clean in 86, she got clean in 87. We both have sponsors that we work with, that we both write steps with. We both sponsor lots of people. We both have a home group. We both attend that home group. We both have service positions in our home group. And we both love Narcotics Anonymous. How long you got? Time's almost up. I came from a place, man, where I told you I was hopeless. I had no dreams of life except getting a bigger bag, one more pill, one more bottle, one more hit. That was my entire existence. I need one more. And I met this lady, Denise, and I love this woman immeasurably. But what happened was God needed me to do some work to be able to perform at the capacity that I needed to perform at to be a man. See, when I got in Narcotics Anonymous, I was 6'1", weighed 150, 60, 70, 80 pounds, whatever it was. And I like to say that when I got into Narcotics Anonymous, I grew up. Narcotics Anonymous turned me into a man. Now check this out. This is scary. That she likes being in a relationship with. See, I found out in Narcotics Anonymous, what you want in a relationship is what you better be willing to become. If I want respect, I better give it. If I want her to trust me, I better be able to trust her. We don't fight, we don't argue, we don't yell, we don't scream. We've never thrown anything. I have never once called her out of her name. And when I got clean, man, all women were whores, bitches, and sluts. That's just the way it was. I was taught that. Today, women are women. Women are to be respected. I don't talk down on women. You know, I respect women. I don't joke about women's body parts. I don't do that stuff. When she's not around, I don't try to flirt with the girl at the coffee pot. Because I know what can happen in Narcotics Anonymous. See, the disease of addiction is so sneaky that it'll disguise itself as another recovering addict sitting right next to you in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And if you don't understand that, keep coming back. Life is really good. I'm going to say this, and I'm probably going to close down soon. I remember me and my running buddy, when we were young, like smoking pot or whatever we were doing. And I remember like being like 16, like, man, you know what? When I get older, I'm going to have a big house. On the water. With a boat. I'm going to get a boat. And I'm going to have a rocking chair on my deck. So when the grandkids come over, I can tell them how it used to be back in the day. What do you think? And he would say, me too, man. Me too. I'm going to have a big house on the water. Now, we weren't thinking who was going to buy the house. Or for that matter, who was going to buy the rocking chair. But I ended up in Narcotics Anonymous. And we live in a big home on the house, on the water, with a boat. And when I wake up in the morning, we have the bed position so that we look out over the river. And we have geese, and we've got ducks and squirrels and birds and all that shit right in the yard. And I feed them every day. I just go out and fucking throw them corn and peanuts and here, take as much of this shit as you can eat. And I love it. I love it. And she gets on me all the time. You gotta stop feeding them so much food. They're eating so much shit, it's unbelievable. Because I'm feeding them like 1,000 pounds of corn a week, like 80 pounds of peanuts to the squirrels. I got fucking blue jay shit food, bird feeders, squirrel houses. We got squirrels that want to come in the house and eat. And check it out, man, the story don't stop. I'm not saying that your story is going to be like my story. But I showed up, and I kept fucking going, man. I just kept going. So the neighbor and his wife were having a big fight. They were getting divorced. And we've made some really good business moves. And I talked to the neighbor in the backyard. I said, what's up, man? He said, oh, man, she don't want me to have the house. I don't want her to have the fucking house. I said, well, look, man, we'll give you this much money for it. And he said, well, let me talk to her. So now we got 2 houses. So we moved next door, and now all the fucking animals are coming over there. And they got friends. And all their friends are coming. And we're feeding all of them. And all the neighbors are like, what are you doing with all these animals? It looks like the Baltimore Zoo. And we just sit in the house and smile because you know what, man, there was a time that I wanted to die. There was a time that I had no hope. There was a time that I said, God, please take me out of here. I can't live like this no more. And Narcotics Anonymous said, no. Show up, man, do the work. Your dreams are available right here in Narcotics Anonymous. Whatever you dream, you can have. It's real. There might be more people out there using the need to be here, but you know what, man? We're kicking the disease's ass. We're kicking the disease's ass. The disease don't like this. The disease wants us to mess up. It wants us to mess up. Check this out, man. I'm going to say a couple things and I'm going to stop. Profound stuff that I've heard in Narcotics Anonymous. Remember this. It's a whole lot nicer being here, wondering what it's like out there, than being out there wondering what it's like in here. And one other thing, I heard a girl say this. She said, you know what? And I've been clean over 20 years. Not one time did I go to bed at night and say, fuck, I should have used today. Thank you very much.